Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Number One Leading Ladies, a podcast by women for women where we focus on building each other up instead of tearing each other down. Today, we have a special guest with us, Avery Carl. I won't do her justice introducing herself. So, Avery, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, so thank you so much for having me. My name is Avery Carl. I'm a real estate investor, and I also own a real estate agency called The Short Term Shop, brokered by EXP. I have to say that or else I get in trouble. And we focus exclusively on working with short-term rental investors. I personally have about 50 doors currently that I own. I have another 50 under contract, so almost 100, assuming everything goes as planned. And I was able to scale my portfolio to that size that pretty quickly in the span of about 4 or 5 years because I invested strategically in short-term rentals first. So I bought 5 cabins in the Smoky Mountains that I have on Airbnb for those who don't know what a short-term rental is. And those make so much more money than just a traditional long-term rental investment that I was able to grow that portfolio really, really quickly than if I had started with long-term rental investments. And the short-term shop to date for 2021 has connected investors with just over 300 million in cash flowing short-term rental investments. So we've helped a lot of families this year build some generational wealth, and that's what we do. I'm happy to talk about it.
Very, very cool. So it seems like you do a little bit of a lot. Which is awesome because as I think a lot of people figured out during, COVID that we need multiple income streams, and having passive income, like you said, creates generational wealth. Thank you for introducing yourself. So really on our podcast, we just ask a couple of questions. This is more of like a phone call, kind of casual. So I guess one of the first things, and your answer will probably be like a variety of different levels of answer because of course you're still going through newer businesses that probably started at different points in time. But what we typically like to know is that, entrepreneurship isn't as pretty as people think it is. And they think that it's, you can take all this time off and whatever. And the reality of it is not that way. First of all, to even get going, typically we have to start somewhere. So that's what I'd like to first start discussing. So starting somewhere, meaning that, if you're me, taking out your first business or starting your first business took putting on a credit card. Some people live with their parents. Some people make sacrifices in the beginning to get it going and then to get to traction. So what did it take for you to get going and then get to the point where you're like, oh, people are buying this, it's making cash flow, it's working, keep doing it, to get to traction? What did that take?
So for me, the getting started was buying our first investment property. And at the time I was working in the music business in Nashville, which the compensation on that is next to nothing because it's glamorous and so many people will do it for free, basically. So I was making $37,000 a year, and my husband was making about $100,000, so that did help. But for us, I put us on a $20 a day each budget to get us to that first down payment. We had to save up almost $50,000 for our first down payment for our first property. And that was not cute. That was us not going out to eat with our friends on the weekend or going out for drinks or going on vacations. Really, it was a lot of, saving and scraping. And then eventually we got to the point that we had enough money for the down payment. And then once everything was up and running with the property, which was our first Airbnb, I think we paid $175,000 for that. That is not the case anymore. They're double, if not for the same property now. But once we got that up and running and rented, we were able to snowball pretty quickly. But again, we just had to budget until we had enough of a down payment for the next one. So
yeah, that makes sense. Now, in the beginning, I know that y'all wanted to do your own thing. Was it ever a thought to partner with other people to have more of a, more leverage on their capital?
Yes, absolutely. So our first 3 properties we were able to do on our own. One of them, we took a HELOC out on our primary residence. So pulled out about $20,000 there.
That's what it means.
Yes. And then the third one, we pulled out, I had just a little bit, maybe $20,000 in my 401k corporate job. So we just cashed that out and bought another one. But on our last 2, we were out of creative ways to do anything, or our last 2 of that first year. We did bring in a partner, who's already an Airbnb or vacation rental investor in another state. And we were kind of turning him on to the Smoky Mountain market, which is where we started. And the way that we did that partnership was he got the loan on the last two properties, put them in his name, and we had an outside legal agreement. Definitely make sure you have attorneys draw this kind of stuff up, because even though we're friends with him and everything has gone beyond smooth, you never know. So we had an outside agreement with them. But the way we did it was he put down the down payment and we managed the properties, and we split everything 50-50 after we paid back our half of the down payment. So we called it a mini mortgage with him. So we had a set amount per month that we paid him of the mini mortgage, and then 50-50 after that. Once our half of the down payment was paid off, then it was just 50-50 each. So we did all the management. He didn't really touch anything, and we split everything 50-50. And we actually did last year, just dissolve that partnership, and we were able to 1031 exchange that. Basically, he bought us out, and we 1031 exchanged into 2 more properties of our own that were actually quite a bit bigger than what we had with him. So partnership's a really great way to scale if you're out of your own capital.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so you kind of got the story with us, or to us, about how you guys got started. I really like the tip on the HELOC. You know, there's definitely, like I mentioned, creative ways to do all kinds of stuff, and this is talking about real estate, so that's one of many ways. And then, you know, you mentioned your 401k, and there's so many ways to do stuff. So that's awesome that you guys were willing to do whatever it took to figure that out and to get going. Now, what would you say on your journey so far has been your biggest lesson?
Really just to not get caught up in either analysis or making everything perfect. Just like go ahead and pull the trigger and go with what you can get. So for example, a 4-bedroom property is going to make more money than a 2-bedroom, but don't wait yourself out of the game. If you can buy a 2-bedroom now, but you have to wait another year to buy a 4, go ahead and buy that too. Pull the trigger, get yourself in the game, because you'd never know what's going to happen while you're waiting to have that down payment. That happened to us on our first one. What was a $150,000 house, and the time that it took us to save was, you know, a $225,000 house. So don't wait yourself out of the game. Just pull the trigger, and don't get caught up in the analysis either, because especially with short-term rentals, they don't fit as nicely into a spreadsheet as like an apartment building does. So if you're trying to, and this is applicable to, I mean, really anything, if you're just trying to make every number and every cell just perfect, you're going to be analyzing until there's nothing left to buy.
Yep. I think that's true for a lot of things right now in this market.
Yeah.
That's some really good advice. And I guess, what would you say along the lines of what's been the biggest lesson? What's been your biggest win?
My biggest win was, I would say, being able to 1031 exchange those 2 partnership properties. So we had a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom with that partner, and we were able to 1031 exchange those into a 4-bedroom and a 5-bedroom. So rather than doubling our income on that, I think we 4 or 5x'd it. And that was a really, really good, not almost lucky, but I don't want to say lucky, but a really strategic move that really like kind of elevated us, took us to the next level.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, have you guys gone through the process of having a property, and then because the market, you know, obviously, like you already said, that you're in, appreciated so much, being able to pull cash out, refi, and then do another deal with that money? Have y'all been able to do that?
We absolutely could. We just haven't had to, just because the cash flow has been there. So we've just left the equity alone. I mean, we have one property that we bought for $650, and it's a beach property. Needed a ton of work. We put about 75 into it, made it worth about $850 as soon as we were finished with it. We've owned that for about 2 years, and it's now worth about 1.4. So we could really pull some significant cash out of that. But you know, we're just going to let it sit until we need it.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Like I said, there's so many, or you said already, there's so many creative ways to do things depending on what your goals are. So your biggest win was at 1031. Now, whose idea was that to do the 1031, and would you do it again?
Yeah, I would definitely do it again. We're actually about to 1031. Our very first property that we ever bought was a long-term rental in Nashville, and we're 1031ing. We're already under contract on a 26 unit in the Midwest. So I'm a big fan of the 1031, but I will also say that every time I've sold something, I've regretted selling it. So if there's a way to not have to sell something to get something else, I would recommend keeping. I've never regretted buying anything. I've always regretted selling stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that quite a bit actually. So there's a couple of strategies, I guess, maybe. So whenever you get to the point of, having more and more equity over time in a property, that maybe I'm just trying to think out loud, when you have different partners. Well, never mind, because I was gonna say if you have a ton of equity, then we'll
the problem right now is there's like not a lot of stuff to buy. There's no inventory really anywhere. So I have tons of equity that I could pull out and do stuff, but there's nothing to do with it at the moment. It's so hard to find deals.
Yeah, or good deals.
Yeah.
Okay, well, very cool. Now, if somebody wanted to get into short-term rentals, what would be probably like your number one piece of advice that you give them?
I would say try to stick to the regional drivable vacation destinations. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to just buy this house down the street from me in Kansas City and turn it into a short-term rental because it's going to make so much more money. You really have to do a lot more analysis than that. The first thing you want to do is check out the regulations and the tourism. Like, are you going to be able to keep this place rented? And the regional drivable vacation destinations are really the most recession resistant in terms of that, because people still go there when they don't have any money because it's drivable. So it's cheaper than like flying to Aspen to go to the mountains, but people will go to Blue Ridge, Georgia and drive there. And then also it's, especially around COVID, people aren't really wanting to get on flights or go to really big metro areas and rent places, but they will drive their cars to like a weekend destination where they can be in control of their environment. So the regional drivable vacation markets are my favorite. That's what I would recommend. That's my biggest piece of advice when it comes to short-term rental investing.
I mean, that's really good. Have you guys been able to do any luxury type short-term rentals?
Yes, we have, I would say 3 of our 8 are luxury. One of them's not live yet. We're renovating it, but the beach house that I talked about earlier that we rehabbed is definitely luxury. It's got a pool. It's 3,500 square feet, 4 beds. It's really big. We definitely have, and I guess it just depends on your definition of luxury. I'd say we have 3 and they do really well.
Yeah. I was going to ask, over COVID, out of the whole portfolio of everything you guys have, what performed probably the best?
It's hard to say because we have everything from a studio up to a 5-bedroom, and none of them really took any big hits. And I think that's because of where they are. So we own in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, and then in the Panhandle of Florida in 3 different little towns, both of which are pretty red states. So they stayed open. There weren't a lot of shutdowns, weren't a lot of regulations on everything. And then they're pretty drivable from a lot of really big cities. So I think we're super lucky during COVID, but also I kind of want to pat myself on the back for the markets that we've chosen have, been areas that historically have not been hit as hard as other areas by big economic events.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the same thing as far as like where we're buying to. But now one last question I've got. So can you help me understand the differentiation between a vacation, like for example, renting, if you're like, oh, I want to go to Las Vegas. Well, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of one. What's a good example of something that I should buy versus not buy if I'm looking for short-term rentals that are maybe near attractions versus far away, like a cabin? I guess, say if neither one is in a big city, like in someone's large apartment building or large condo building, I mean, what would be probably the next best thing? Because my question is about the tourism. With everything changing over COVID, for example, if you're in a market like Vegas, you know what I mean? In a house, like a 2-level house in Vegas or something like that, I could see that not doing well versus like, so yeah, like what tourism to avoid and stay, or what tourism stayed over COVID, I guess.
Sure. Okay. So my advice is, Wherever you are thinking about, definitely look really hard into the regulations. B, when you're thinking, okay, well, where on earth should I buy one of these things? Try to think of a place that you went when you were a kid on vacation with your parents, where you rented a house or a condo rather than a hotel, because those are the places that are going to have the most established regulations, the longest term. So for example, like Destin, where I invest, or 30A, which is like Grayton Beach, Seaside area, or the Smoky Mountains. Those are all places where people have been going and renting cabins, condos, beach houses for decades and decades instead of hotels. So because of that, those cities and counties figured out how to monetize those houses decades ago. So the regulations are in place. That battle's been fought. But if you go somewhere like Nashville or Vegas, those are areas that people have been staying in hotels mostly until the last 10 years, since Airbnb and Vrbo have become like a big thing. So short-term rentals are kind of a new thing in those areas. Those are the areas where you're going to see the most push and pull, the anti-short-term rental regulation, all the fights going on, because that battle is still being fought. Where in the other places, like the regional drivable vacation rental markets, that battle was fought like in the 70s, 80s. It's done. They're making money. It would be way too detrimental to the local economies for those places to ever regulate against them. So just kind of keep an eye on that and try to gauge how long short-term rentals have been around. If 10 years, that makes me a little nervous. If 30 years, go for it.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice, because it's so like dependent on so many things. Like there's areas like I think it's called like Foxwoods or something like that, which is like, I think in New Jersey or somewhere nearby there's like a casino there, Foxwoods, something like that. And that's supposed to be like a very big touristy area where you can do both, where they have like the casino has its hotel, then nearby you could rent little beach houses because it's on the beach. And that's interesting to go have to look at that demographic. Well, how long has Foxwoods? How long have been renting, the beach houses there, that kind of thing. That's really great advice. Super gold nugget. Thank you, Avery, so much for going into detail about exactly how you use your expertise to find a great income producing property. This is something that I've noticed, especially because we cater to women, about like, how do you get started? Like, how do I start making cash flow? And so, for me, it was using my income from a real estate brokerage or a real estate agent, basically, to use that chunk to go put down payments onto stuff that cash flows. But, some people wholesale, some people can get into Airbnbs by doing arbitrage and then like do that to own some Airbnb. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different levels. So this is a great kind of like middle point of some things we've covered on the how to get started end, all the way up to the 5,000 units that you're buying kind of thing. So I think awesome. Thank you so much, for your time today. If anyone wants to either reach out to you, get involved with any of your programs or anything that you offer, how can our listeners reach out to you?
Right on my website, and it's theshorttermshop.com. My email address is right there on the front page, and there's a button that says schedule a consultation.
Okay. Avery, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time today on a Monday to go over all the gold nuggets that you have and to help our women support each other, to make more cash flow, and to help empower each other. Everybody that's listening, I'll see you again next week on number 1, Leading Ladies. Thank you for tuning in.